This is Hebrews chapter 4, verse 1. Let us therefore fear, lest the promise being left us of entering into his rest, any of you should seem to come short of it. For unto us was the gospel preached, as well as unto them. But the word preached did not profit them, not being mixed with faith in them that heard it. For we which have believed do enter into rest, as he said, As I have sworn in my wrath, if they shall enter into my rest, although the works were finished from the foundation of the world. For he spake in concern, Salak, for he spake in a certain place of the seventh day on this wise. And the Most High did rest the seventh day from all his works. Shalom, Akim. First and foremost, I want to give all praise, all honor, and all glory due to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Waharachah Kodash. I want to give double honors to our apostles and our elders of Great Millstone that rule well. Peace and salutations and many blessings to you elect Akim across the four winds of this earth, kicking this word in sincerity and in truth. I'm the brother Sha'ar from the Great Millstone Dallas camp, and I want to come at you with a quick lesson, mainly tackling the second verse in Hebrews, the 4th chapter. Okay, so I'm going to read that again, and I'm going to break it down. But just as a brief abridgment, when you go into the time of the Hebrews, all right, when you go into the time when this book was written, when you understand what was going on within our people around that time, Jake was losing hope. Jake was losing faith because they felt like the coming of a Mashiach was taking longer. All right. And also, too, you got to understand that at that time that they were going through those thoughts, having those thoughts of doubt and disbelief, they were being persecuted at the same time. So you had a lot of Jake that was losing hope and losing faith due to all the tribulation that they were catching. And they felt like they weren't receiving the right things. They felt like they lost hope at the end of the day. And that's all that matters pretty much going into it. So they actually got to the resort of actually going back to sacrificing. All right, because they felt like that was going to help them get out of the perils that they were in, instead of understanding the spiritual sacrifice Yahweh went through. Well, and mind you, some of them probably understood the spiritual sacrifice, but again, they didn't have faith and they didn't carry on with it. So they got to going back to the old way, which was already done away with. All right. That's why when you read it in Hebrews, the 3rd chapter, in the 8th verse, it says, Harden not your hearts as in the provocation in the day of temptation in the wilderness. All right. So we have to understand that Jake around the time of Moses in the wilderness was hardening their hearts. Now, mind you, they was hardening their hearts, and the Lord, instead of having us be in the wilderness for a few days, he extended it to 40 years. And the older generation had to die off. The only ones out of that generation that was able to see the land of our rest was Joshua and Caleb. Okay, so he's likening what was happening back then to the time of the Hebrews, why this letter was being written. Okay, because you had Jake that was hardening their hearts. And when you jump down to verse 12, it says, Take heed, brethren, lest there be any of you of an evil heart of unbelief in departing from the living power. So he says that if you depart from this, you have an evil heart. If you disbelieve in the Lord, you have an evil heart. So a lot of Jake was doing wickedness back then, man. A lot of Jake was doing wickedness just by unbelief, just by lack of faith. Thus, they got to actually sacrificing real animals. They went back to it when that law had already been fulfilled with Yahweh Shai. Okay, so as I go back to chapter 4, verse 2, and I read this again, because mind you, the reason why I'm reading this, I'm going to go into how just like it might have took a little long back then, even though it was only, Yahweh Shai was on the scene. He died early AD. And then, when you look at it, I believe this book was written around the time. It might have been a little bit before 70 AD. So that's a 60 to 70 year period where, Jake was expecting something more. Okay. And then they started, a lot of Jake started wigging out. This letter had to be reaffirmed to the church. Like, look, hey, you don't got to sacrifice no more. Stop. We already have a high priest that had done all this. And you have to believe his will is being done. Okay. And that was that shake-up call to a lot of Jake, because they was losing hope. They was losing faith. So when you look at that, you have to look at right now. Okay, there's a lot of guys out here losing faith, a lot of guys falling out, losing hope in the Lord. Okay, it's enough of that, man. We working on the Lord's time right now. You really sit back and think back. 1,000 years is one day to the Lord. So we have to consider that Yahweh B'Hashem Yahweh Shai is working speedily, man. This ain't time to lose faith. This is the time where our faith has to be stronger than ever before. We're really rehearsing it, because when these perils really hit, boy, we gonna need it. All right, but check this out. I'm gonna read this in verse 2 again in chapter 4. It says, for unto us was the gospel preached, as well as unto them. Okay, so again, them, he's likening it to the time of Moses. All right, that's why I said, harden not thine hearts like in the days of provocation, where they provoked the Lord. Okay, the word was preached unto us just like it was preached to them back then, right? But check this out. It says, as well as unto them, but the word preached did not profit them. Okay, it didn't profit them because why? They didn't make it to the land of their rest. Their children had to do it because of what? Their unbelief in Yahweh B'Hashem Yahweh Shai. They're losing hope in the Lord. Okay, so they didn't get profited. And it's going to tell you why it didn't profit them at the end of this verse. It says, not being mixed with faith in them that heard it. So they didn't apply faith with all the stuff that they had heard. All right, when the law was written and given to the nation of Israel, Israel read it, but as soon as perils hit, they just started going off instantly. Started losing hope in the Lord. That's because it wasn't mixed with faith. So when you go into this letter that's written to the Israelites, all right, it applied to them, and this is affirmation. Like, look, you have to utilize faith mixed with what you've read. Anybody can know the scriptures. Anybody can quote scriptures and quote precepts. All right. But the Lord's like, what about your faith? Where's your faith at, though? And there's a time that's coming very soon where all of our faith is truly going to be tested. Now we understand it's being tested in ways here and there, but we haven't experienced the times that the scriptures say it's going to happen. So we have examples of men that actually persevered just by mixing faith with what they understood. And that's how they persevered, through hope in the Lord. And then there's a lot of examples within the scriptures that didn't apply the faith. They just used what they knew, but didn't apply the faith, and they fell off. And there's guys that exist like that today. You know what happens? We're in the time. All right. So we want to make sure that we pray to Yahweh B'Hashem Yahweh Shai that he keeps our loins girt, all right, and keeps us heavily equipped with the armor of righteousness, all right, and above all those things, having that shield of faith, as Ephesians the 6th chapter says. And all these things that we study and all these things that we learn within the scriptures, we got to make sure that we apply faith and walk like how these words that we read, these precious words that we read, tells us how to walk. We need to apply faith, mix it with faith. That's how you'll persevere. Because if you don't got faith with it, all the stuff is null and void. Because the scriptures say in Hebrews the 11th chapter, it's impossible to please him without faith. And those ancient men, everyone that you read about those ancient men that had a great rapport with the Lord, guess what? They believed. They didn't have an evil heart of disbelief. Through perils, that's when their faith is truly tested. Okay? We haven't really just been persecuted yet. A lot of these things that we read about that our ancient forefathers went through, they did it. They went through it. Look at Yahweh Shai first and foremost as an example. He was glorified through tribulation. He was beat, stricken, and he still kept the faith. So how much more does that apply to us? We got to make sure that we mix these things we know with faith and practice it every day within our walk, within our sojourning here. Practice it. All right. Practice to obey the Lord and just trust in his word. And you'll see the elevation take place after that more and more and more. And then when that time actually approaches, the time of Jacob's trouble that we talk about, that the scriptures talk about, we'll be more equipped with that impenetrable spiritual armor, where we will be able to withstand the fiery darts of the wicked. But the only way you can do that is if you apply the things that you know mixed with faith, because faith is within the things that we read about, and it's a very important source within this knowledge that we have, within this thing of ours. All right. So Lord willing, this was edifying. I, wanted to do a lesson on that because it really stood out to me. All right. We got to make sure that we're not like our ancient forefathers that went off, because they did not mix what they knew with faith. They just went and didn't believe. And it was obvious they didn't believe, because as soon as perils hit the quick second, they went off and built golden calves and provoked the Lord. And Jacob, around the time of the Hebrews, was provoking the Lord. Didn't have faith. Started sacrificing again, doing actual sacrifices though, like animals and everything. All right. And these are ones that actually believed in Yahushua Mashiach. So they lost hope in the Lord quick. All right. So just like this letter was a shake up to those men out there in the churches, this lesson is a spiritual shake up to you brothers that are out there that might be wavering around in the faith. This ain't the time. Harden not thine hearts like in the days of provocation. All right. Use faith. I'm going to end it off on that. Lord willing, this lesson was edifying. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, Waharakhakodash. Double honors to our apostles and our elders of Great Millstone that rule well. Peace and salutations and many blessings to you, elect Akim across the four winds of this earth, kicking this word in sincerity and in truth. Shalom.